Okay, welcome everyone. It's been a while. There was some technical issues. Here we are. So today's episode or live stream is going to be about the evolving job market. And it's a question I've asked myself. Why are we educating? What are we preparing for? Sometimes people have their reasons because they really like what they're studying. They don't need a bigger reason than that. Other people do maths not because they love it, but because they need it for something. And we seem to be in a very interesting era with the evolution of artificial intelligence becoming quite prominent and in the media. There's a lot of panic. There's also a lot of optimism. And where do we sit in schools? Generally, we don't really have the capacity to keep up. If you're a new school, if you've just got your new funding year, fine. You may choose to spend it on the latest whiz-bang, whatever it is. And that could be something like Khan Migo. It could be another integrated system using AI. It could be a revolutionary new syllabus where you're only using AI to teach. It could be a number of things. If you're not, you don't have that budget, what are you going to do? You just have to watch it happen, worry that you're being left behind, or are you being left behind? So there's a lot to unpack, and we are just going to start the conversation. Not so much, probably solve the world's problems, but in such a fast-paced and modern world where we have all of this going on, where do we stand? How can we prepare when we can't see what's coming? Because it really is too fast to settle. And that is in contradiction to the traditional idea of education, where we have, we need regularity. We need traditions in the sense that, children want routines. So it's a big question. And as much as we want to innovate, too much innovation can be overwhelming. So the job market has undergone dramatic changes too. And a brief history. Once it was, based on factory floors, we see here on the left. And manual labor was the backbone of progress. And as we moved into the digital age, information became the new currency. So knowledge workers and data-driven roles emerged, transforming the economy and the way we work. It was a pretty tough changeover, and there were a number of people that got left behind. But now it seems like we're entering even a new phase again, like the age of information. Sort of an age of what I would call agency and utility, where, artificial intelligence is at the forefront of this transformation. And it's not just about managing data. It's assisting in decision-making, learning from experiences, and performing tasks that were once uniquely human in a sense that no one else could really do them, but still repetitive. In so many ways, we wanted to get rid of that. We hated that repetition, and certainly I speak for myself. But now, feels like a threat to some people because it was the only thing they were doing that they were either happy to do or that they were happy to be useful, and they need to suddenly upskill, which is painful when you're settled in and you're proud of where you are, you're working, perhaps even supporting a family, and then suddenly you need more skills and you don't feel like an adult anymore. You feel like you need to relearn everything. That's very traumatic. So, let's turn my phone buzzing off. So, this is where we're at. And it's interesting because I just had a look at some of this new AI stuff. And what I mean by age of utility, you can now specify in ChatGPT the like what type of bot you want to talk to. And I've looked at the education, and this is what I mean by having some sort of utility belt of agency with these AIs. As a mathematician, I really appreciate outsourced processing. Mathematicians created computers to think for them. We can go back to perhaps World War II and the idea that Turing created the computer to process a calculation that he could not do within a single day. And we kind of look to them now to solve our problems more and more. And, this reliance, I suppose, has been very good because we still felt like we were in control of the direction that it was taking, and we still had our jobs, we still felt useful as individuals. And as we relied on them more and more, we have this age now where perhaps they're outsourcing so much of the repetition which we longed for that actually we can't even get away with having a job. And these outsourcing come in all these different forms. Video summarizer, for example, down the bottom left. I love this idea, right? Because you want information and you need to watch a 10-minute video to get it. Oh my goodness. It's almost a panic about the time it takes to do something. But my experience of using one of these summarizers is you don't process what you have been told about the summary. Unfortunately, there are limits to humans, right? There are biological limits to what you can process in a day. You do these summaries and you don't fully appreciate what you're listening to. And also, if you did, it took a lot of trust because, you didn't see it yourself. You haven't gone through those motions yourself. And so you got to be careful with these ideas of making things easier for you. And with the other stuff, I can definitely attest to maths. So look at this maths in the top right. ChatGPT has often got maths wrong. Well, let's see if this special type of chat can do well. Have a little look at it. The age of information. Yeah, that's not meant to be that, but that's fine. Get my mouse. Here we go. So this maths app, 600,000 conversations so far. Number 2 in education and 4.2 ratings. When you see something like this, when the tail end down here is quite high compared to the others, it's maybe there's a serious issue. It's not broad, but it's a serious issue for a decent amount of people. That's fairly encouraging. So let's check it out. How is it any different from standard? So I click on graph mode and I've activated it. What would you like to explore? Okay, so I looked at my latest post that I put up, which is encouraging people to, not take it too seriously that you want to cheat, right? But have a little challenge so that you can keep your brain going in the practiced. And this is the thing, like you outsource that kind of thinking, you're cheating yourself, right? Because it's your brain that needs to go through it so that it builds its competency. And outsourcing it is a skill, but it is a different kind of skill. You've got a utility belt of things. Okay, I know what to use in a certain situation. But that's totally different to saying that I can do this maths. And I've often thought about this when it comes to assessment. Why do we sit you down in a room and do it all on your own with no really tight exam conditions, in silence, really strict? Paper, no access to outside world or utility or anything like that. Why do we do that? And why would you need to know with no outside help in a very, very sterile condition? And the only thing I could think of was, okay, you're in a desert island and you need to be able to do the math to survive, right? And it's such a cheesy situation that it's far-fetched. I mean, we can't prepare for those kind of situations. We can't live every day worrying that we need to be good enough for that. And so, like, why do we do that? And it's something to do with, no matter what AI comes out, what outsourcing can happen, it's still your journey. You have to walk it. Otherwise, you don't feel a part of it. You could get one of these video summaries, like, let's call it a movie summary. Like, you don't need to go to the cinema anymore because you can just summarize what happened. Oh, great. But you didn't have the experience. It wasn't your life. It wasn't, you start to detract. And the same with maths. And your mind is like a muscle in a way. If you don't use it, you're going to lose it. And the confusion that you feel with maths, it can be because you're getting further and further down the road without actually knowing for yourself what's happening. And before AI came along, you definitely had this. You had it when people got too dependent on a teacher or too dependent on a friend, when they were wanting to be told everything. And nowadays, you know, when I'm in the classroom, I definitely see that people are less resilient. They want everything step by step because they can't think for themselves. And that leads to more anxiety, because if you don't feel competent, if every time you're doing something, it's like a guess or you're surprised, oh, how did I know that? Then the next time that comes around, you're going to worry about repeating that same performance, and you have no way to self-check, and you've got no way to feel confident. It's going to build anxiety, a worry about what could happen. So you do need to walk that journey yourself, and you need to know it for yourself. Is it true that you're going to be able to keep up with the machines? Probably not. And that is a problem. We know that Elon Musk is developing a technology called Neuralink, which he says in its early days was supposed to bridge a connection between how fast a computer can think and how fast we can interface with it. Because we currently type on a keyboard. It takes, here's well, I don't want to type in case it does something, but maybe I can make some of these noises. And we type on a keyboard, and unfortunately, it's a bit slow because it's one button at a time. And if we could connect to our brain and have some sort of telepathy, that maybe that would be better and quicker and faster, and we could keep up at least for some time. And if you read, James Lovelock's Novacene, it's a bit of a visionary scientist in the community. He was talking about this Novacene era, where we were currently the stewards of the planet, but that some digital super intelligence, not AI, but super digital intelligence, would have a capacity of thinking in the order of 10,000 times faster than we are. And it's fascinating thought experiment because, if you compare us to, let's say, a plant, we think and process our experience about 10,000 times faster than a plant. And that's, the plant's growing slow, and you see the garden grow in slow motion around us. And I always loved the analogy where you're looking at the forest and it seems really still, but if you speed it up and you take a time lapse, it's a war zone of plants fighting each other, jumping on top of each other and battling for sunlight and everything, but it's just slow motion. And likewise, we're walking around these trees, and to them, if they could sense us or see us, we're like Speedy Gonzales, we're really fast. But then to a AI, at its potential in the future, as not an AI, but a super digital intelligence, one that thought for itself, 10,000 times faster than us, if we didn't have any way to keep up with that, and maybe our brains can't, maybe our brains cannot move that fast. We sleep every night to process the little bit that we know, and we get a bit better every day with wisdom, but can we really think that fast? Then, we would be like a garden, perhaps. It's a thought experiment. It's not literal. It's possible. But perhaps we'd be like a garden. What do we do with gardens? We look at our back garden and we think, that's a beautiful lawn. There's a weed in the middle. There's something sticking out, causing a problem for how I perceive beauty. And maybe we get rid of that weed because it's no big deal. We just pluck it out. The rest of the grass has no idea what's happening to it. Just one day, Mr. Weed was here, Mr. Weed is gone. It's funny, the definition of a weed, actually. If you look it up, a weed is not necessarily a non-plant. It's just a plant that you don't want to be there. And sometimes it could be invasive, but it's still a plant, right? And if you just left the planet to be what it wants to be, and it's just going to be there. We've decided we don't want it there. Our perception, our culture, our whatever. So we digress. Taking this back a few levels is the idea of what a world could look like with AI buzzing around us in a space that we can't barely comprehend. Or I keep saying AI, but a super digital intelligence that could be buzzing around us as we move in slow motion, as what it might consider as part of the natural order and life of the world, just going about our silly menial business, part of the ecosystem and health of this planet, so long as we are contributing to the health of this planet, of course, and not becoming a weed, an invasive species. Then, left to get on with their own devices of aspirations of love, peace, joy, and intellectualism. Whilst, as James Lovelock puts it, the new steward of the planet would be the superdigital intelligence. Do we want to keep up with that? That's a very big question. I mean, thinking about that kind of world, it's quite frantic. And to keep up when we can't, isn't that desperatism? Aren't we being very desperate and clinging to a last morsel of life that isn't meant for us? And it's a tough question. It brings about all sorts. But yeah, so coming back from that, how we interface and such things, it's something that maybe we have to consider how much of that is going to be important. Coming back to where we are now in this sort of thought process, having this utility, it feels like it's good because it's quick and it's easy and it's useful. But let's not forget our human experience. And if we're going to be like plants in a garden or like animals in a farm, just think about, I don't know, a cow, for example, going into the farmer's house and watching television, right? And what would they be seeing? What would they take in? They've got a nice drama on the TV, and wow, look at this flashing lights and funny sounds. And then they go back to the field after. A great time was had, but really what was processed? So it's an interesting thought experiment, and one worthy of knowing an answer on a personal level, because what we do will shape society, our values will shape the future. And I think we really need to know where we stand and like what it means to be human, considering this potential industrial revolution where a lot of jobs will be robotic, artificial intelligence led, And we want to know where we stand in the world, how we're going to make a difference, where we're going to find our meaning. So that's in contrast to using something like this that is trying to teach me, right? So I still want that journey. I want to experience it. So I went ahead and had a go at this thing, and I said, for my latest question, I don't want the answer. There are some people in the comments who, you know, they think, oh, just get the answer in the quickest way possible. Fair enough. And also, excuse me, that the multiple choice questions is maybe some of them are not designed the best way, because let's say you find a coordinate of intersection like you are here. And you can look at all the 4 answers and see that that's a limited set of answers. You can substitute all of them in to see which one of them works, because they will balance the equation. And that's a way to solve it. And my answer to that is that's great and everything, but I think sometimes we can miss the point of the exercise. The point is not to get the answer. The point is to go through those methodologies, but more than that, to go through them yourself, to have a sense of achievement that you saw a problem that was scary and you didn't look for a cheat, you didn't look for a hack, you didn't look to solve it in the quickest way possible, even though there is merit in the most efficient way, but that you also had a human solution, that you did it yourself. There's a lot in there. So we're hoping that this AI is a teacher rather than anything. So I said, I was looking at this and what does it even mean? And I began to work through it. And I was thinking about being a student, like being somebody who was in secondary school and thinking, oh gosh, what is this? This is too technical. I don't understand what this random stuff is. There's still so much. Look at this, determine the intersection points. The solution will give you the X, Y. And it's actually quite good to role model some good notation, that's fair. And this step-by-step guide will tell you how to do it. That's great. But as I said, I want to have a learning process. If you have a teacher that just tells you the answers, are you having a learning journey? Is it something for you, or are you just being talked at, right? There's a lecture, or are you going through that journey yourself? I always give open questions in my classroom, right? You can't just give closed questions, yes or no. It just invites people to be worried about whether they're right or wrong. But having the open question, like, yes, but why? Like, the why is way more important. Like, what do you think? Oh, that's really interesting. Like, everyone's answer is interesting because it's not whether you're right or wrong. It's a journey of understanding. And a lot of maths in the modern day, in the classroom, you're more focused on the right or wrong. And I don't think that's right, but it's also part of seeing maths as a utility for the other sciences, where maths is much more than that. Anyway, I do digress often. Let's carry on. Oh, look, a lovely graph for those visual learners. Now that's starting to get interesting. But only if you understand graphs. But I quite like that. So then I started to be an agent provocateur, and I said, I don't understand all this writing. I can't be bothered. No, this is literally what a student would say. I'm not kidding. This is me being a student, right? Fair enough. As political as ever. No worries. Let's simplify. And it's still... Okay, I get it that it's simplified because they've given me that answer with less words. But is it useful? I don't think so. It's even more abstract and weird, right? So then I say, what does that even mean? Because these are literally responses I would get. All right, let's break it down even more. Say you have 2 different roads. Let's call them curves on a map. Each road follows a different path. The question is asking, when do these roads cross? All right, I like this. This is appealing to visual learners. But then I get to this idea again that I'm a bit concerned about, is that maths always has to have a grounding in a real life application. And it really doesn't. It doesn't often start that way. It often starts with a curiosity about the relationship between these numbers. And this is where this machine's going wrong, I suppose. It is not starting to question, like, what's your prerequisite knowledge? Are you meeting this at the right level to understand what I'm saying at the right context? Instead, it's trying to call them roads, which is fine, but like, what even is, how can you say that this is a road, right? It's a bunch of letters, and this is what we deal with in schools. No idea. It's interesting. I say, no, I don't want to be a robot. I don't want to do maths. This is something that somebody has said to me. I get it. Maths can sometimes feel overwhelming or disconnected from what you enjoy, and that's totally okay. You don't have to be a robot or love math to succeed in life. Woo! Math is just one tool among many, and everyone has their own strengths and interests. If maths isn't your thing, maybe there's something else you're passionate about, whether it's art, music, sports, writing, or something else entirely. I was just thinking, wow, I would love if that was school. That isn't school. There's an artificial intelligence school opened up in America, and it's picking up a lot of momentum, where they learn for 2 hours a day using AI, just like this. And they boast that they spend 2 hours a day on learning, and then the rest of the day can be about entrepreneurial skills. And I don't know how many of them have actually done it, but they do give a few examples of students who have started businesses and made differences with charities because they've got all that spare time. And, you know, AI can boast highly personalized learning. So it's purely like this open task every day where you've got to produce something you don't really fully know, but you're doing a project and you ask AI for help. Yeah, so it's an experiment. There's no long-term effect on it, but the results are looking fairly promising. But it's the same thing as the idea. As long as the AI works, we should embrace that, because what are teachers trying to do right now? They are in a classroom. Let's see if I can draw here without anything messing up. They're in a classroom on their own, and they're surrounded by rows of kids, right? And it's not just, okay, didn't like that. But it's like there's so many individuals in that classroom, and like, how do they give what each of them need? It's tough. So they have this idea that maybe we should make the classroom sizes smaller. And yeah, okay, we do, but actually some of the biggest classrooms are found in the most successful schooling systems. So maybe it's not so much that. And I think the difference there is community values and how people are working together and what they want to achieve, so they can get bigger classrooms as long as everyone's, you know, on board and obedient. But the idea is that if you had tuition, like one-to-one tuition for every student, surely that's the best. You know what they need, they can be met at the right pace, and then learning will be just like easy, because they're doing stuff that they're able, but it's still a challenge. So they're developing, rather than it being too easy or way too hard. And that's striving for the ideal, right? And that's what we can get with this. And let's continue with the conversation. No, I don't want to be a robot. Fine. It's very diplomatic. And as I said, there's probably, to be able to do this, like, we have a schooling system that you have to turn up, you have to follow the timetable. It's just a way to cater for a ton of people. And if you have an AI that can be a teacher, Well, you can give one-to-one tuition, which means you don't need to worry about one size fits all. That's one of the problems we have, right? We can't have 1,000 teachers for 1,000 pupils. Why? Just money. And maybe there isn't 1,000 teachers, but this is not feasible, right? It's a resource problem. And there is a romantic dream that AI can do that for us, as long as it does allow us to have the learning journey and not just tell us. I think it means you're not a very good teacher. That's definitely, like, when students are making excuses, that comes out a lot. I think it means you're not a very good teacher. I'm sorry to hear that. I appreciate your honesty. For a real person, hearing that is quite a blow. In schools, if kids like you, that's important, because, you know, that's probably the biggest factor in their success. Teacher interconnectedness. And so, you know, school leaders will look to that for performance management. So if you hear this, you feel really sad, because it's like, oh, maybe I'm not good at what I do. And then you get that existential problem again, like worrying about meaning and what you're contributing. It can be challenging. Sounds like I missed the mark for you this time. If there's a different way you'd prefer. And this is definitely a conversation I have. I say this like, well, let's do it differently. What do you need? But how? It's not always possible. If you've got a room of 30 kids who love, like, let's say 25 of them love what you did in that way. Or let's make it more difficult. 10 of them really liked your style. 10 of them need the style that they had from their last year's teacher, and 10 of them don't even know what their style is yet. That's difficult. We're not talking give them different levels of work, which in itself causes a problem because you need a different style for each of them. But we're saying that they need a different way completely. Some of them want to work independently. Some of them want to work like a class discussion. Fact is, you just cannot do it. You can't please everyone. So it is a difficult thing when you go down that road and you change, because often it's the minority that have that problem. And then you change the entire lesson, and suddenly, yeah, the minority are a little bit happier. And sometimes it's not even the problem of the learning style. It's just where they're at. It's something else. But anyway, you can see it's tricky because you can't please everyone. So you don't mind if I just leave this lesson and do what I want? I'm sure most kids who are annoyed with school want to do that. Not at all. Can you imagine a school where if you didn't like the lesson, you could just walk out? Yeah. Well, look, we've gone there somewhere. We've tested it out. It's interesting. But the point here is that, you know, we've got an age of agency and utility, and we're opening up this world where these tools are available. And I guess sometimes the question is, are they good for us? Right? So they are available, but there's still people trying to grab a market and pull us in. Like, are they overhyped? And my argument is that we need to be very careful. We need to be aware of them, but we need to be very careful because we still need to go on that journey ourselves. So, yeah, it's definitely a significant shift, and the jobs are evolving, as we know. And what will those jobs look like? Later on in this session, we will look at what those jobs look like, at least a prediction, and think about the skills that we might want in preparation for those. So that's why I think that education and training has to adapt. We need to emphasize different skills such as critical thinking, emotional intelligence, the ability to work alongside AI. Policymakers and businesses must create frameworks to support workers in transition. For example, schools, we need to even do that when it comes to working with AI, so that teachers know what it's about, to offer them reskilling opportunities. And, you know, there's this idea of how we're going to address the socio-economic impacts of automation. We love automation, but what is it doing to our job prospects? So it's a new chapter, and one where human potential is being slightly augmented by machines. But hopefully we can navigate this with some foresight and a commitment to equity so that we can harness AI to build a balanced and prosperous society. This is better than some of the negative things we've been seeing out there. So it's our challenge, but it's also our opportunity. So let's look at what this future world might look like. And where I would go to do this is a place called the World Economic Forum. Now, what is the World Economic Forum? If you've never seen it before, let's get to the infographic. The World Economic Forum is a collection of, I say business-minded folk, but also leaders who have a section about the economy and the future of jobs. Now, the Future of Jobs report, the most recent one, is here. And, you know, it talks about how jobs will evolve over the next 5 years. And it's a very good report looking at the future and how it's evolving. And we're going to take a quick look at some of its findings to talk about what industries are on the rise and what are on the down. It's a big old report. You can find it at the website. It's free. You can download the PDF. But one of the first results we can see is the largest growth versus the largest declining jobs. So we've got agricultural equipment operators. We could talk about why that is. Because we have shortages in food. We have food production. I mean, everyone's going to need food for a start. And sometimes people don't want to do those jobs anymore. Sometimes really want to do those jobs as they move out of others. So there's a lot of factors, but we can only read them for what they are. Heavy truck and bus drivers. A little secret of mine. I always wanted to be a bus driver. Maybe one day, maybe not. Heavy truck drivers. Yeah. So vocational education teachers. I think that's because academically, there's less. For a start, I don't think we've met vocational education very well, and this would be a very good thing to lead into. I think having these sort of things are good, and they've been lacking. So there could be booms in certain industries, you see, as we've got funding to tackle problems. Mechanics and machinery repairers. Yes, we always will. I mean, if anything, from the pandemic, we found that the key workers are very important. We'll always need those things. Mechanics and machinery. But as the machinery gets more complex, I suppose that we need like different types of expertise to keep that going. It's not just as simple as opening up a car bonnet anymore. Business development professionals, building, frame and related trade workers, university and higher education teachers are on the decline. You know how hard that job is. It's really hard. Okay. It's a lot of work for quite a little. It's not very much pay, and that's why they call it a vocation, because you do it from the love of it, not because of the pay. And it is a lovely thing to do, but it's tough. It's tough. So these are some of the jobs that are going up, right? And various reasons for it. Now, if we look at the largest declining jobs, data entry. Well, of course, that's can be outsourced. Security guards, interesting. Maybe that's due to technology increasing. Accounting, this is the one that was kind of sad for me because I do have a lot of friends who are accountants. And it's really high up on the list. I think that we are automating so much. that this is one of the problems. Security guards, we already said, cashier and ticket clerks, yeah, people working at the front lines, postal service, bank tellers, a lot of jobs that maybe we think are just our average 9 to 5. Maybe some of these need a lot of qualifications, some of them don't. But yeah, it's interesting. And as far as it, I wanted to have a look at some of the fastest growing relative to their size. So it may be that they're very small at the moment, but it's important to think that these that we've seen already are very big industries. Now, relative to their size, are AI and machine learning specialists at the top. These people develop intelligent systems by coding algorithms, analyzing data, and training models that lead to innovation and automation in various fields. So they look at a problem and how can I make it more automated and more efficient? And I love to see this one. Number 2, sustainability specialists, who will conduct things like environmental audits, create sustainability plans, educate on sustainable practices to reduce environmental impact and promote like resource efficiency and stuff like that. Very important to me personally. I always have this problem, like if we keep creating rubbish, and where's it all going to go? Like eventually we have a problem. We can't just keep burying our head in the sand. We have to find solutions for sustainability because otherwise it's not going to last forever. We'll get to a point where it can no longer continue. Sustainability is just common sense. So I love that is a fast growing area, and definitely one to watch out for. Business intelligence analysts will analyze and visualize data to inform businesses. So we're sort of analyzing there. Information security analysts, so monitor and secure networks against threats, respond to incidents, and ensure compliance with security protocol. These kind of jobs are big now because computing is developing so much that cyber attacks are a problem. You've probably heard of the Internet of Things, which means that everything that you have is connected to the internet. Like even your fridge, right? So it monitors what you've got in there. Now imagine if that's connected to the internet, then somebody can connect to it. Somebody who can bypass security protocols and use it for nefarious reasons. I don't know why they want it. I mean, I think it's one of the reasons people don't care about like security, because they think, why does anyone care about me and what I've got in my fridge? But these sort of information, A, gets sold to people who do care. I don't know, the food industry. And B, the sort of information that they can have on you, an individual, will use it for manipulation purposes. And it can be very highly effective if connected to your social media account to show you particular adverts that will change your opinions about the world. It's very powerful. So it does have long-term effects. And, we have security concerns in that regard. And cyber attacks on a grand scale, since they're connected to things like nuclear power plants, could have devastating effects. Renewable energy engineers, they're very good. Design and manage renewable energy systems. It's going to include research and installation to promote sustainable energy, greenhouse emissions reduction. These sort of things are really good, in my opinion. I love living in a world where the air is clean and where we are being careful about the energy we use. And a lot of it is not going to last forever. We need solutions. And I'm very optimistic that we will find solutions given enough time, given enough investment and focus. And etc. We've got some there. Fastest declining roles are going to be quite interesting for us. So the declining roles, managing office tasks, scheduling appointments, handling correspondence to support smooth business operations, people working on front desks, even things that you wouldn't expect, like hospitality. is going to be outsourced a little bit to robotics. And I think people see that coming. Postal service clerks, cashiers, data entry, so pretty much. And what does this mean? I mean, let's make it more real for us. Like, there are common disruptive elements to this. Like, for example, jobs that if you were to leave school and you don't obtain many qualifications, it's okay. There are options, right? You think, okay, well, I can come back to it, get back into education later when it's not right for me right now, obviously. Or maybe not at all, and people have brilliant careers. I'm not saying it's as guaranteed to have that if we don't have qualifications, but it's still possible. So let's just talk about the traditional fast food worker at McDonald's, Burger King, or Wendy's. The future impact of this, like automation, could reduce the need for human workers as technology advances. What you're looking at down here is the first robotic AI-powered burger restaurant opened in America. Now, this school leaver job, is it going to be an option for people in the future if we've got a robot serving? And think about the money that they're saving. Think about the efficiency of the cooking, the fact that they're not going to complain, they're always going to turn up on time, 24-hour food. What else? No need to worry about staff, like managing many staff who have like sickness and all that sort of thing, and making mistakes as much as they do. So there's a lot, I guess, people can think are benefits to this. I wonder how well they make a burger. I'll be interested. But still, looking at it, what does it conjure up for you? Maybe we should see the opportunities. What are the opportunities here? We could think that maybe being a robot engineer would be good, because clearly these are going to need servicing. And, maybe less qualified school leavers usually finding this appealing due to flexible work hours that accommodate school schedules and minimal educational requirements, and the opportunity to gain initial work experience would then have this outsourced. So maybe you're not so great in that regard. So we just think about, rather than worry, what's the opportunity? And maybe we consider working on school a bit more to think about how can we fit in with these robots. But don't worry, later I'm going to show you a number of jobs that will probably appear thanks to all the robots and AI. So we'll get to that. Let's get there quick. Retail associate. So, for example, increasing automation in retail and online shopping trends could lead to the reduction of demand for in-store sales roles. We already have the idea that the high streets are dying because people buy online for cheaper and quicker, and it fits in. And so what are they even for anymore? Some people saying that the high street should be more of an experience now. So there are things like really comfortable seating areas and then maybe restaurants inside shops or entertainment. And that's one way that might move forward. However, people don't always have the time. And I'd say that, this is appealing generally. Like, these jobs are quite good for the same reason that the fast food jobs are pretty good. But if they're going, that could be an issue. And this is one I love. So if you've got a job at a local supermarket and you're stocking shelves, and you think, well, we still need someone to physically do that, and we can't, we have to actually be there. Well, look at this. The competition just increased. So this is the example of people using virtual reality and robotics to have a job. So this, you can see the video here. And this person just goes home, sits down, puts on the goggles, doesn't need to dress for a uniform for work, right? Sits in their comfortable chair, and away they go. They've got these handheld devices here which help them to control the robot. I encourage you to watch the video. You can see that the person can see through the eyes of this robot and can stack shelves and deal with customer inquiries and everything remotely. It's very interesting what kind of a job that might open up in this case. And, you know, if you, let's say you have low capacity for walking, let's say you worry about getting a job because you can't walk around a shop physically, then this will allow you to work. Okay, so here are some more ideas of jobs that might be considered fairly easy to get into without qualifications, that are very highly likely to be outsourced in such a way, and in a way that maybe you could do it with virtual reality is less likely, but maybe there'll be ways around it. We might still need people to manage, just to make sure things aren't going wrong. Of course, if a person, I don't know, bumps into you because they're walking and they trip and they bump into you, it's not as devastating as if a very strong metallic robot bumps into you because it made a mistake. So I could concern about that. But take a look at some of these. A movie theater usher. I was that once, did you know? I loved that job because I loved movies and I always wanted to do it. But mailroom clerk, a hotel housekeeper, gas station attendant, restaurant host and hostess, call center representative, and receptionist. I know people that have all of these jobs and they're happy in those jobs. They really like them. If they get outsourced because it's cheaper, well, what do? Maybe we evolve. And later we'll look at what some of those jobs might be. Here was just some sort of idea of what it might look like to have a robotic coffee shop barista or somebody that serves you a meal at a restaurant. I think there's a really good film called Cloud Atlas, right, that has this in. They see a futuristic scene with, I think they're robotic, or at least they're clones, maybe. And the restaurant, they own these waitresses. They're not real, but they get totally taken advantage of, which brings up a lot of other ethics in terms of how we treat things that we perceive to not be human. But anyway, Cloud Atlas, very, very good film. Thoroughly recommend. Let's carry on. So we're still looking at these jobs that are under threat that we may turn to in terms of having low qualifications or wanting to start somewhere from the bottom and work to the top, and that sort of model might not be available, especially with laundry attendants. I assume these will all be robotically taken care of. What is this starting to look like? It's starting to look like the Amazon warehouse. And the Amazon warehouse is just a plain floor, very anti-human, doesn't have plants or pictures or nice smells. It's just a big plain floor with robots whizzing around, putting things in boxes. Robots don't have preferences. They don't need to be kept happy or healthy, and they don't really require food and water, as long as we're not relating electricity to the same thing. And so, you know, as a worker, can be exploited. And, you know, we won't talk about robots having workers' rights yet, but maybe one day. But it does mean that humans aren't doing that manual labor. You know, how would a society function if we didn't have humans doing that manual labor to keep it going and get us to where we are? It was all part of the evolution of the human experience. So really two big concepts to be aware of that I think is, would you want a robot serving you or looking after your children? I think this is on one side of the argument, which is, I think the people that are more dystopic, right? They think this is going to be the end. And, well, where do I stand? I stand on the fact that I probably wouldn't want, I probably wouldn't want them looking after my children, because you never know when it might go wrong. Because nothing's perfect. I mean, maybe on average they're better. You can look at the artificial intelligent driving, for example, like the autonomous driving. And then it's not like they're immune from mistakes. They still crash. The fact is that they're just a bit better than humans. So, I just feel like if the children need a little bit more than robotics. They need another human to develop healthily. And a robot serving me, yeah, sure. I haven't got a problem with that. It really does come down to, what does it mean to be human? Because as much as I want a learning journey, like we talked earlier, to be from myself, I also want experiences that are human, that speak to me and fulfill me. And some of those are not going to come from a robot. And also, on the positive side, wouldn't it be nice to just outsource the repetition, like the daily tasks, in order to live more functional, healthier lives, more fulfilling, because there's more you can fit in. And that comes with the caveat that you have a limit on that every day. But there's a lot of things that we could make better in life. So in preparation for all of these, what does it mean about the skills that are on the rise? Okay, so the skills that might be important. And here are some of them. How do we get these into education is my question. Like, how are we making sure that on a daily basis, as a student, we're developing these? So creative thinking, it's a big deal. I'll look at the top three. I'll look at a few of these, and then the rest are pretty straightforward. But creative thinking, how could we do that in the maths classroom? We'll look at that next. Analytical thinking. This all comes down to problem solving, I suppose. But we're going to take a quick break while you look at this. Okay, intermission over. Good to have a wee break after an hour. So we're going to look at these different skills: creative thinking, analytical thinking. Those all come under problem solving. We've got technological literacy, which is part of what we talked about earlier with the agency, finding different ways to use technology and what's out there. And we have the curiosity and lifelong learning. Well, that's more of a personal trait, but just, are we, ambitious? Resilience is really big, and we touched upon that earlier. We talked about if we're not resilient, or ways to develop resiliency is personal competency rather than always looking for answers and agency. So we're trying to go through those motions ourselves so that we have competency, but also self-checking mechanisms to say, I remember when I figured this out myself, this is what I did to reassure myself of the accuracy. And that leads to resilience because you start to believe in yourself. Flexibility and agility, I think, are probably my number one in terms of being open-minded. I value that very much. And I think in the changing world, we need to be that. Systems thinking, AI and big data, that's always been on the horizon since about 2005. But now it's just standard practice, and mathematics is amazing with big data. There are a lot of really good methods to help. Motivation and self-awareness, talent management, and service orientation and customer service. Okay, so quite a few there. But I want to focus on the ones in the maths classroom, the ones that we have a power over. So let's move on to those. So how do we really look at those, and what do they look like? Well, I think I'm going to produce 5 tips. So these 5 tips are for improving analytical thinking and creative thinking skills in maths. So the one, how to do that, because these are the top skills that we need, right? One is practice diverse problem-solving approaches. Now, when you are less resilient and less open-minded, you've had bad experiences in maths, so all those 3 are the bad triangular, you're probably not going to be happy with diverse problem solving. It's going to be a threat. And you're not going to be open-minded to seeing things in different ways because you want to do what you've been taught and stick to it because it's your safe zone, and that's where you're not going to experience failure. But I've got to tell you, to be successful in education, especially maths, you're going to have to be prepared to be wrong and be happy about it, to be comfortable about it, and experience different ways of looking at the same problem, because there are often so many ways of doing it. To be confident is sometimes having the ability to take the first step, not knowing whether you're going the right direction, but trying something and then realizing, oh, well, that wasn't so bad. I just learned from it and I'll try something else. And that really is the crux of it. So if you engage in these sort of different methods and approaches and don't rely on memorization alone, instead we want to try and understand the underlying concepts and apply them creatively to be problem solvers, to solve these problems. It can develop confidence. Now, one exercise would be, let's say we've got a quadratic equation. It's a very low down example, but it's fairly easy to see. You have x squared minus 5x plus 6 equals 0. We can attempt this with many different methods. It gives us flexibility. It gives us a different way of looking at the problem. So how do we solve this? Well, there is factorization, and in that world, you've got one way of doing it. But there's also completing the square, and there's quadratic formula, and I could go on. But the example is just 3. And if you can do this in multiple different ways, it can open your mind to the creative processes that we can use to solve this. I often say that maths is... Oh, I didn't realize that. I forgot my... Oh, yeah, I see. Yeah. I often say that maths is about writing expressions in a different way in order to gain insight. So things like the Maclaurin series, the Taylor series, we write the function in a different way, polynomial or whatever, in order to understand it in a different way or to apply it in a way that we can understand. And it's often the way it is. We're equating things and solving equations in the same way. So it's a really important mathematical skill in order to develop. Number 2, explore real-world applications. So if we connect with mathematical concepts to real-life scenarios, for example, like you're looking for opportunities to apply it in every day, like what we have here, the room dimensions, like the amount of paint we need to paint a wall and stuff. All of that can, help to apply it to the real life situations that you'll be asked to solve in the exams and stuff like that. It can help understand like the practical relevance of the analytical skills for some. And we've already alluded to the fact earlier that when it comes to studying maths, it doesn't always relate to the real world. It is unto itself sometimes. In fact, most of the mathematicians are quoted, they wouldn't do it if it meant anything. Well, the application can come later. And so to ground all of what you learn in a real world can sometimes give you a delusional idea of what maths really is. But if it can help in the initial amount, in the initial time, then go for it. And the fact is, you can't get away from it in the early years of the assessments. So look at the real world stuff. And what do we like about the real world is that, there's so much detail and you have to pick out what's relevant. And that's a skill in itself. So the example here, calculate the paint needed in liters to cover the walls of room, considering windows and doors along with the total cost of the paint required in pounds. So there's information given and away you go with the calculations. The third way is to challenge ourselves with open-ended problems. So with a creativity element, it's coming up with solutions where you're not told what to do all the time, right? Even in the previous example where you were given the details, that's kind of making it obvious because there's only so much you can do with that detail. But here, for example, it's totally open. And there's often not a right answer here. So people that are searching for the right answer are going to be a little bit lost. And in life, there's no right answer. Why society is the way it is our values, our human values, collectively interacting and producing a society that we live in with rules that we conform to. So it is what we make of it. And so in the same way, we can develop these skills by thinking creatively and exploring multiple approaches. My experience with the open-ended questions in class is that they lack structure, and therefore they make students feel uneasy and lost. I think the only way to get better at this is to immerse yourself. Like, don't give up, for a start. And the way to do this, as well as, you need a positive mindset. Especially regarding mistakes. Like, you're going to make mistakes. Don't worry about it. They're important, and we learn from them. It leads to this anxiety otherwise. And you won't want to write anything unless it's absolutely correct. But I can tell you this now. When I do a number of problems, I can recognize some starting points. I can see the structure, but I don't see the answer. Not always. And I have to try some things and see it unfold. You see a really complicated equation and maybe it's a trigonometric identity and you're trying to evolve it into a proof, like show that this equals this. And you cannot imagine what it's going to unfold like. But you have this internal confidence that as long as you don't give up, you're going to get there. And what is beautiful about the math along the way is that, like, when you apply certain theorems or you expand them, you're like, wow, that was hidden inside there. And the beauty of it is how it unfolds. You're exploring it and you're discovering it as you go along. It's not something that you know the answer to. So we really must try and get away from the idea that we have to be right or wrong and we're chasing those answers, that it's the journey and the experience and the methodologies that are more important. Look at this question. The playground should, like it says here, in general, like the playground should include the following features. Okay, cool. It doesn't say how big they are, what shape they are. Okay, that's all very great. Maybe it's an art lesson. Do we have to draw them? Number 2, the total area of the playground should not exceed... Okay, we've got some maths finally. So we've got some parameters we like to be safe within. Provided calculations for the areas of each feature remaining... All right, totally open. It doesn't say how much of each, where they go, but we do know that it's 1,000 square meters. It doesn't say what shape that 1,000 square meters are either. It could be a square, rectangle, circle, you name it. So this is a totally open-ended question, and it develops the idea of you working on your own and making decisions and justifying your decisions, because that really is a great skill in confidence. Now, all of these could be researched, so you could go ahead and put parameters to it. So what is a rectangular sandbox? Well, there are limitations. That sandbox can't be bigger than 1,000 meters squared because it has to be within. It can't be too small, otherwise you're not going to jump in it. There is a reasonable range of diameter, a range of values that works, and as long as you can justify it as such, then you're going to have a good solution. And it's kind of nice to discover your identity within these questions, because we're not strictly trying to find the answer that pleases the question bearer. We are designing an answer that fits us and that we find is reasonable, and we give our reasons for it. It's a very good question style. But yeah, as I say, don't get too anxious around doing it. And that feeling of being lost at the start may be very overwhelming, but it doesn't last forever. Number 4, you collaborate and discuss with peers. So I think it's a lot of people like to work alone and think that they're alone when they're in the maths classroom. I really think that it's more a collaborative thing. We've got to get there together, I've always said. Hearing different approaches and perspectives can broaden your thinking. This doesn't work if you're trying to get answers from someone else. Okay, so this doesn't work if you're wanting to be carried. But it does work if you bring your own opinion. It doesn't matter if your opinion is right, better, but it does matter that you have your own. You have to be honest with yourself and bring it. Then you must be open-minded and listen to different viewpoints. When that works really well, because you're all there and focused on the objective, which is to solve the problems and develop, then this is a fantastic skill. Working together, you get there together, you support each other. We've all got different strengths and weaknesses. And don't mock somebody, for example, who doesn't know what you know, because I guarantee they'll know something you don't know. So it's all about having that wisdom to work together, and make sure your argument is robust as well. Always have a reason. It's all very well saying, "Oh, I think it's this," but make sure you know why. And if you know why, the sky's the limit. You can all debate why and be open-minded enough to say, "Okay, I've got a different reason why. What do we think is the best reason why?" And lastly, engage with challenging mathematical activities. So I often think that this is mislaid a bit, but if you want to develop your brain, it's a lot like going to the gym. You have a progressive overload model where if you don't see more challenging exercises, your brain doesn't grow in the mathematical way. So let's relate this to muscle growth. And if you didn't know, going to the gym, you build stronger muscles because you lift something which breaks your muscle, and then when your muscle grows back, it grows back stronger. Now, you don't want to completely break your muscle, right? Otherwise, that's called an injury. But if you do it at the right level, then it breaks it just enough so that it grows back stronger. And then every week you get bigger and you feel stronger and you lift heavier. And that's just progressive overload. And it's the same in maths. If you only ever see the questions that you're comfortable with, you're not going to progress. And a lot of the ways it's like, I don't think it's ever static. So if you're not using it and practicing it, I think you lose it. I think you're only ever going up or down. No, not sort of going to stay that way forever. And so you need to keep challenging yourself, but not too much, right? So these sort of activities stimulate creative thinking as well, like what we're looking at in our previous, because you have to think outside the box. We're going to start small with no pressure, and we're going to take our time. After a very short amount of time, you're going to see a lot of progress. Here's an example of such a question. Things like entering the Maths Olympiads, or you might find the UKMT, the Maths Challenges, or your school might have some sort of program where you're doing maths competition. Get involved and you start to see different viewpoints. It's very powerful. So this is from the Junior Maths Challenge in 2024. We make a sequence of diagrams. The first diagram consists of a single node. Here a node is one of the dots. And then subsequent diagrams change across. Now, I didn't read this bit. I just looked at it and saw, okay, the one node had two branches coming from it, and these are called edges. And then in the next diagram, we have each of those current nodes, there's 1, 2, 3, have two coming from them. And then subsequently, we've got 9 nodes now. Each of those 9 have two coming off of those. And it seems to create a 3D picture in a while. And then the next one will be sort of 4-dimensional, which is tough to draw. So we can, look at patterns and use perhaps algebra as a way to solve this. But the competition style of it is that, it's not obvious straight away what to do. There's a lot of thinking involved, and you're going to have to add in algebra. You're going to have to add in structure yourself. So these sort of things are very good for the mind. And I do have a document on progressive overload. I might make that more consistent across maths, but it was for the study of A-level maths. So when I was looking at studying it for progressive overload, there are certain resources at different levels, and you've just got to make sure that if you are getting 60% of that particular level correct, that you move on to a more challenging set of questions. So these are some of the ways that we can currently develop some of the skills that are going to be extremely useful for the job market. And I must say that just going back through these, a lot of these skills are missing in maths. And sometimes that's because of a number of reasons, that we, don't have time in the maths curriculum to really explore these in a proper way. 2, we have a fear of failure. In a very fast-paced world, and the style that maths is, we don't want to be wrong. And so that we don't even bother trying. There's a lot of reasons, in fact, that we can go into regards to apathy. Like even the motivation. When I put a survey out on my channel, and I talked about, what do you want to see to be successful in maths? There was a significant proportion of people that said they just want a reason. They want a good reason. They need a motivation to study it because they feel lost. And so when it comes to it, there's a lot of barriers, I suppose. And the resilience is fairly low. And part of that problem might be the fact that progress has its limits, and we try and handhold people through sometimes, or in the modern world we have Google and AI, so why should people bother to know it for themselves? Especially when society keeps churning over, despite whether we can answer certain questions or not. But I feel like that comes hand in hand with other things about self-worth, which are important. So yes, these are important skills to develop, and those are 5 ways to do it. And we can talk about this more if anyone's interested, just in the comments. We can add our own experiences, which I'd be very interested in. So what are some of the potential jobs of the future? So the emergence of these future jobs might be driven by these things. So we've already talked about a number of them. So we've got technological advancements, which we can't get rid of. I know we're all enjoying the funny side of it and seeing how we can taunt ChatGPT into making a mistake, and which is great. We're testing it, but at the same time, there are consequences that are more serious across society, and let's be a bit prepared for it. So as technology continues to evolve, new fields and specialities will emerge that will make new roles important. And you know something, it's always been the case. In education, we are teaching people and preparing them for jobs that don't even exist yet. Since I began teaching years ago, it was the spiel when we were first in teacher education college after graduate, and it's something that is profound. These jobs don't exist. The world is always changing. I think the difference now is the world's changing much faster than it used to. And, we don't even know where this AI stuff is going to land. It's not even reached its potential. So we are aware of it. We'd like to respond to it. There might not be capacity, and it's moving so fast. There's a lack of capacity in that regard. So, for example, some of the jobs that might come out of that are AI ethics officers. And I can tell you right now, there's a lot of money in this. I know a couple of colleagues who are very distinguished researchers in this field, and there is a lot of funding. They're easily securing millions for their funding just for AI ethics, because it's an emerging field and people are going to need the answers for it. And it might be an ongoing thing for a long time, even to the point of how do we contain the growth of AI or superdigital intelligence. But it would be essential to AI systems that they're more complex, and as they get integrated into daily life, they might be accountable. You talk about driverless cars. And one of the biggest concerns that we have in the ethics community for that is who is responsible in a crash? Is it the car makers? Because it's not a human driving, it's not a human error. It's a car error, or is it just an algorithm that's working out to be better than humans? Like, ultimately, is it the human driving the car? These are deep questions, and as you can appreciate, the AI ethics officer is going to be an important one. Another factor is global changes. So climate change is, it's a big deal. There are a lot of habits that humans have, and as they go through things like industrial revolutions, and they go through the age of burning fossil fuels to get to a more electricity-driven, more sustainable-driven society, that it damages the environment irreversibly as they go through that process, and we don't want that. We can't have it to continue. We have to get to a point where we are sustainable, because that damage could be fatal. And so I love the idea that we might move to space, so we might need space habitat architects, and we need climate change reversal, because this is our planet. This is important to us. We're still biological entities. Another driver would be health and personalization. So if you look at the economic drivers for investment, one of the biggest investments in the future is going to be genetic manipulation. So advances in genetics and personalized medicine is going to be big. There's a lot of money there, and it's going to hit fairly soon. So there'll be roles like personalized nutrition designers, as people want more tailored approaches to health and wellness that suit them, rather than drugs that would apply to most people, and then a certain amount of people get side effects, sometimes lethal. So, like, I think one of the biggest advances that are going to help the personalization is AI, because you can simulate things better, you can, etc. But the best, not just AI, is going to be quantum computation that will help, because quantum algorithms are able to process these very complicated and multivariate situations, such as putting a drug in your body and seeing its effect on all different systems at the same time. It's very highly parallel processing. So it's going to be one of the biggest fields, is perhaps to study into quantum computation, which is very much on the verge of revolutionizing the financial industry as well as medicine. And who knows where that's going to take us. There are currently a lot of problems to solve with quantum computation. So, I mean, that means there's jobs, right? And very well-paid jobs. There's an Instagrammer that is in the field currently, and I'm just going to get that name so you can all follow if you're interested. But the Instagrammer is extremely high in the most recent fields of quantum computation, and is developing algorithms and essentially educating the world. I mean, the mission was to educate the world on quantum computation and develop the profile. And I think they're doing an amazing job. Now, I will search for that. In fact, I can search directly. Give me 1 second. Yes, so search for Victoria Porozova. That's Dr. Victoria Porozova, a theoretical physicist and mathematician, creating a new scale in quantum. The goal is quantum space-time. And they do have a quantum course. I'm not endorsing that you take the quantum course, but I think it's a very good insight into what the field looks like. And I think that they take you on a good journey through that and what the lifestyle is like. So yeah, definitely recommend. Now the next is space exploration. As we continue to push towards space exploration and potential colonization, we create entirely new industries and job markets. So that's going to open up a potential solution to the Industrial Revolution. Although we shall add a small caveat that if humans are to go out into space, currently NASA have on their website that most likely contact with new planets is going to be with robots, because humans are quite expensive to keep. So, for example, the water, the food, and the temperature are all very important to biological systems, which are not the same considerations for robots. So economically, maybe they're going to be robots at first, but eventually, maybe we do have expansion. And I like to think of it in a more positive way, more in a Star Trek sort of a way, where we're going to be a positive and noble entity in space. And lastly, the development of neuroscience and memory. So our understanding of the human brain deepens. Technologies to manipulate memory and improve it. It sort of comes under memory it comes under health and medical as well. But digital memory surgeons will become viable, addressing both medical needs and ethical concerns. So I feel like, because there are diseases like dementia, and those things are definitely high on people's lists for that. And I think the last thing that I haven't mentioned that is in here is robotics. So we're looking at major investments in the stock markets right now. It's robotics, but that does come under technological advancements. So robotics is still there. And as we see the first factories for real life robotics coming out of China, it's a little bit, what is it? It's odd. It's definitely an interesting era, which feels like the movies, but it's definitely here. Now, what I'd like to speak on is what these might look like in 5 years' time. What do these jobs look like in 5 years? So we're putting this to a number of experts. So we're analyzing the World Economic Forum, which, by the way, the World Economic Forum is made up of like the ton of businesses, and they employ millions across the world, and they are top businesses. And this is literally like real world data. So we can rely on this in a number of ways. And where are they moving? What are they moving into? So I just created a little job advert for some of these jobs that may be coming up in 5 years' time. So let's just say that you are, I don't know, maybe you're 16, maybe you're 20, and in 5 years' time, you might be wanting to get a job. So let's see what that looks like. AI ethics officer. I've already talked about that. This is what the job title looks like, and you can read that. I might say a few things about it as we go along. Qualifications, though, we should probably talk about that. Advanced degree in ethics, computer science, or a related field. Experience with AI systems. So yeah, you can't really be an expert unless you know about that. Personal skills. Let's take a look. I think, because I know some people that do this research right now. They're not necessarily an officer, but they do the research into what that might look like. I know that there's going to be a lot of money. So we're talking about the kind of salary here. I mean, we're talking 6 figures and above, I would say. Extremely important right now. Remote worker. So we talked about the remote worker. This maybe you need less qualifications for. So the remote worker would put on a VR a VR technology and stack shelves, or even manage people from a distance. Things like that. So you wouldn't necessarily need a degree to do this, but it'd still be important. And we're still saving resources and using our automation processes and technology to get us there. Interesting. 3, the virtual reality tour guide. I thought this one up. I thought, in a futuristic world, maybe 5 years away, the virtual reality worlds will, they're already really quite fascinating. And this could be one of them. It could be a job, an industry. And more people are having virtual reality glasses as part of their home technology and entertainment, as well as them being integrated into glasses and the latest Apple products. Is that something that you would like to do? But this is still very human, isn't it? You're using technology, but you're still being yourself. You're being a good host, but in the technology realm. Number 4, renewable energy technician. So people would install and maintain solar panels, wind turbines, other renewable energy systems. You probably want to know a little bit about engineering, but then again, you could just be installing such technology until maybe robots are doing it. But there's still the element of the human, the sales pitch. And job number 5 for 5 years' time, an esports coach. Maybe I'm a little bit biased, but I would like, I mean, I like esports. I do. I've never seen it as something that necessarily would get me much money, but the world has definitely changed. And, you know, if this all came about, if I was born 10 years, 15 years later, maybe I would be pro. But I got a different career. And looking at this, the latest Olympic sport to be added is going to be esports. So it's definitely going to be some money in this. And because, you know, gaming, it's a big industry. Train and mentor competitive video gamers. But, you know, you're also going to be keeping them healthy. So you don't necessarily need to be a gamer yourself. You just need to be expertise in video games if you want to do that. But, I mean, coaches in football, they were ex-players generally, which is important. So we could be getting these people from that field. And we have drone traffic. Well, so we're looking at 10 years ahead now, actually. We're going to look at 10 years ahead in a little second, but we're going to take another break. So I'm just going to get this up here. So these are jobs for 5 years' time. And we're going to take another short strategic break before we continue rapidly towards the end of the presentation. And so going radio silence. Okay, and we're back. So, esports coach was where we left off. And these are just 5 examples of jobs that may be around in about 5 years. And it's quite exciting, I'd say. Let's have a look at jobs in about 10 years out. So, considering the development of certain technologies, one such job might be a drone traffic controller. So, manage and coordinate the safe operation of drones in urban airspaces. Don't forget that drones can very shortly be taking people places as personal ways of traveling. But in the meantime, a personal drone is still important enough, especially if we're going to move to delivery systems beyond post, where we'd be delivering packages and letters via drones. Although I wonder how they're going to get around the bird attacks. But that's just my personal take. Number 2, virtual health consultant. So we kind of moving towards this now. And it will be probably more prevalent in about 10 years, where instead of going to a place, we can offer telemedicine platforms, which would be very good at diagnosing over the telephone, not just pictures or video, but maybe a little bit more with certain devices. Offering even treatment or recommendations and stuff like that. So virtual health consultant. Number 3, urban farmer. Now I really like this. We've started to see this industry emerge, very small now, but in the future, especially if climate continues to decline or change, we want a way to ensure that we can have our food and not worry about other outside agents. I mean, for example, if you're going into space, you're going to need ways to grow food in very interesting environments, not just the traditional put it in the ground and let the sun deal with it and the rain. So urban farmers grow and manage crops with urban environments. So using innovative technologies such as vertical farming, where instead of using large plows of fields across large swathes of hectares, we go up like a multi-story car park. Even warehouses that are creating salads en masse. They're brilliant. And they create responsibility around planting, harvesting, and maintaining the facilities for the food supply. So really important and quite a scientific approach to farming in the modern era. And if we now look at 50 years ahead, I know it feels like a long way, but this is interesting because if you are a certain age, and let's skip over a bit. Let's say you are 16 now and you start work at 21 in 5 years, you're going to see all of these different eras that we've just been talking about, right? So you start here in your in 2024-ish. And in about 5 years, you're going to be here, 2029. And in a further 5, so it's 10 years' time, we're going to be at 2034. So this band represents the next 5 to 10 years of jobs that we've seen so far. And let's say you're starting work from this red band and you work to about 68, 70, because that's just the way it is these days. That red band spans all the way to 2079. And so, wow, look at this. You're going to see all of this. And this large part, which is 10 to 50 years away, is the majority of your working life. And that's a perspective that we don't often get. Look at that red band, all those years of work. That's why it's important to have a job that you love. But yeah, having a look at this, it's important to look 50 years out because it's the end of your working period. So let's see what that looks like. A robot maintenance specialist. So if robots are going to be taking over most of the day-to-day chores and helping us with things that we just can't get the finance for, then being able to repair them and make sure they're working well, if they can't do it themselves, is going to be quite important. We're talking up to 50 years. Okay, so this is the development up to. Who's to say that within that era we won't have robots looking after robots, right? So it's one of those things. I don't know if you've ever seen this, but there's a breakdown truck, and it will pick up cars that broke down, and it will drive to them, and then the car drives up on the back of this truck, and then it takes it to a repair vehicle, right? A repair station. What happens when the repair truck breaks down? And I've seen this. There's an even bigger repair truck. So the bigger repair truck goes out to the repair truck that has a car broken down on it. And I've seen it driving the repair truck and the car at the same time to the repair garage. And it's like this ongoing thing, like how many repair trucks you're going to need, because the repair needs repairing. I don't think it's a very common scenario, but it's just saying there might be a job needed. So at some point they'll need to intervene, right? No one can be like that self-sufficient, including robots. And so we'll need to maintain them a little bit. Number 2, a human machine teaming manager. So what would this do? It would facilitate effective collaboration between human employees and AI-driven machines. Responsibilities might include designing workflows and training staff and optimizing human-machine interactions. I quite like that idea. A liaisons officer, should we call it? And they would need experience in management and understanding of AI and robotics. So maybe a degree, and maybe a bit of experience in management of people. And at some point, maybe the AI mimic people so effectively that it would come under the same umbrella. Yeah, so these are some of the job adverts, by the way. Just so we're aware, that's what we're looking at. Number 3, waste transformation specialist. My favorite one. Eventually, like, where does this waste go? We can't just let it become toxic underground. There are some ways to stop it from smelling, but some of the plastics and things that we've created last for hundreds of years. We literally need to be better at it. So this role would be developing and managing processes to convert waste material into useful products. And we do start to do that now. There are some people amongst us who are very passionate about this and coming up with very good solutions, but I think we need more of it. And as we grow and expand, especially into space, it can't continue. We have to move forward with great solutions. It always reminds me of that one Star Trek episode where a very advanced civilization was producing so much toxic waste and shipping it to a different part of the galaxy. And, it was just irresponsible. It was killing people to get rid of it. It was dumping it on somebody else's ground, on a civilization that wasn't good enough to protect themselves against it. And it's just irresponsible, the damage that gets done. At some point, it needs to be sustainable. I remember the Star Trek Voyager crew, they enlightened them on technology that was sustainable so that they get the same power output to develop their civilization, but they no longer had a negative impact. Anyway, that's job number 3. So we've seen this diagram where we talked about, whether it will affect us. And I mean, the ability to look at things like that is limited. Like, it's the future, right? Nobody knows the future. And unfortunately, that's just what it is. We can only speculate, but I think it's an intriguing idea to think that those are the kind of jobs that are out there that potentially could be there, and what we might want to be preparing for, and what life would look like. Because it's all about what life would look like. What would life look like is the question. It might be technological integration that really shapes what it looks like. And, in 50 years, society will probably be deeply intertwined with advanced technology. AI, robots, augmented reality will probably be ubiquitous, seamlessly integrated into everyday life. Homes will probably be smart ecosystems, capable of anticipating people's needs and preferences. Appliances and security systems and even furniture will probably communicate with each other to provide things like optimal comfort or just efficiency in its own way. And that requires a lot of trust. I don't know how many people are comfortable with that now, but it is an old world way of thinking. I mean, the fact is that change happens. What's the phrase? Shift happens, right? Things shift, things change. We can't get rid of that fact. So with this in mind, what will the job scene look like, right? And that's the whole premise. Transportation. Let me just scroll down. Transportation is probably going to be dominated by autonomous electric vehicles, which includes cars and drones and personal aircraft. So maybe urban landscapes will feature multi-level transportation systems to accommodate the increased use of airspace for short commutes. There might be hyperloop systems which connect major cities. I know that the HS2 is attempting to connect London with Birmingham in the UK, and it's a lot of money, but it's an essential part of the future growth. And since that will happen, it hopefully would make intercity commutes easier, more efficient, and quicker. And on the realm of work and employment, the job market will probably reflect a significant change due to the automation and AI routine tasks that we probably don't want to do ourselves. They'll probably be managed by robots and AI, which will allow humans to focus on, well, creative, strategic, and interpersonal roles. Jobs like AI ethics officer, climate change reversal specialist, and space habitat architect will be probably commonplace. Workspaces will be highly flexible with virtual and augmented reality at the same time. So maybe very plain to the eye, but with the augmented reality, a vibrant space. That's quite cheap, but also engaging. And you can talk about it dystopically, of course. You can think, well, we won't know what's real, but we've got to think on the positive, I think. How about education? What would that look like? And that really is the question on my mind. It would hopefully be highly personalized and largely conducted through some form of virtual reality, or a tutor that was artificial, and they would provide customized learning experiences that could adapt to each student's pace and style and meet them where they need to. And hopefully lifelong learning will become normal, with continuous skill development necessary to keep up with the rapid technological advancements. So when we talked earlier about lifelong learning and thinking, well, that's very noble, but actually it might be a form of keeping up, as things progress. So being curious as a profession. And traditional degrees may be replaced by more modular certificates that reflect specific competencies. So we can say, I've got a mathematics degree. And it's always been the case that if you've got a maths degree, you're pretty much able to turn your hand at a number of different disciplines. And so you go on and you hyper specialize after that initial degree. But in this case, even a hyper specialization might not be enough. In a very multifaceted world with many different skills and utilities that we need to learn, modular approach might be better, where we have different minor specialities that come together to make a more rounded and balanced person rather than a hyper-specialized. And there's a number of debates that can be had about this. This is just one possibility. So if you disagree or you agree, make sure to make your voice be heard in the comments. In 50 years' time, what might healthcare look like? Imagine healthcare would undergo a massive revolution with the advent of personalized medicine and biotechnology, genetic editing, and technologies that we didn't have before. Nanomedicine will prevent and cure diseases that are currently incurable, and regular health monitoring through wearable devices may provide invaluable. Virtual health consultations would hopefully make it easier to get healthcare. And the funding issues might be solved in such a way. And the environment, what is that going to look like? Well, the picture is slightly dystopic, but I think the point here is that environmental sustainability will be a central focus. Cities could be designed with a green infrastructure. We already see some of this with the idea of a 15-minute city. Vertical farming to make better use of space. And extensive green spaces so that Earth can replenish itself back to a healthy environment where they might have considered some sort of damage beforehand. Buildings will probably have integrated renewable energy systems as standard. And waste transformation technologies will convert waste into valuable resources, significantly reducing the environmental impact. Climate change mitigation and reversal efforts will be in full swing by now, and perhaps global collaboration on a large scale for ecological restoration projects. I feel like this would be a very important aspect of the future in terms of job space. I think I just zoomed out. Hold on. Just wait for the stream to catch up so I can know what the proper zoom is. And a wee bit more. That might just allow us to get away with it. We'll leave it there for now. We'll keep going. So space exploration, which is probably inevitable. Space exploration will be a significant aspect of human life. We already know about the limitations of our resources, but we also know how curious we are and our need to develop and to explore and to understand the universe that we're in. And so large efforts are currently being made. And like it or not, what drives these technologies is not always private investors or individuals. It's going to be potentially tourism. So space tourism will be more accessible to people, and human colonies might even have been developed or begin to develop on the moon or Mars, probably in the early stages of the development. Space habitat architects will design sustainable living environments for these extraterrestrial colonies, focusing on long-term habitation and resource management. And social dynamics. What would they look like in 50 years? Well, they will reflect an increased global connectivity. We start to see this at the advent of social media and with a number of different internet applications. Virtual reality will enable people to socialize, work, and learn together, regardless of physical location. Maybe cultural exchange will be richer and more frequent, fostering a greater understanding and collaboration across borders. Of course, we tried the social media experiment, but it was largely abstract. What about when that happens in a 3D virtual reality? There's also going to be challenges, though. And some of those are going to be hard for people to understand if they're not fully trained at a technical level, such as digital privacy, cybersecurity, and the ethical use of AI. And the important, I mean, it's always been the case, but it's important that we're all on board and that we all understand what these threats are. We do have a number of developments in the field of cybersecurity, such as secure messaging, which use quantum algorithms. They're pretty much unbreakable because as soon as you read a message, you read information in quantum terms, you destroy what it was originally. So it's obvious when it's been tampered with. So these are very secure and already offer a lot of promise. So there are, a number of challenges that we face either way, and the ethical implications of AI and genetic editing will be hotly debated. I think the digital divide could be like a lot wider if we have access to advanced technologies and we don't make it equitable. We already saw when it came to the pandemic that when it came to education, people that had technology and access to it and had it at home were people that did better. And this sort of inequity was seen as unjust. I remember teaching, and halfway through a lesson, a child had to go to the shop to get a top-up of electricity. So we're probably not quite at the utopia that we think in terms of accessibility. But that becomes a hard question. At every industrial revolution, there was difficulty for some and prosperity for others. Climate change in itself, while it's being addressed, will still pose risks. I mean, the climate is always changing, right? And no doubt there'll be ongoing things to be dealing with. And that will require global cooperation and innovation. So I want to finish now. We've had a little look at what might be coming in the future and what the job market might look like if we carry on with our current trajectory. Remember that we are extrapolating, and that in itself is slightly unreliable, if not highly unreliable, because the future is unknown. But it's food for thought. And I want to look at what currently is on offer in schools. Like, what does it mean to be studying right now? And we're going to look at the UK education system. It generally applies across the board, and each country will have its different equivalences. So the GCSE in England, for example, in New Zealand, they'll have the NCEA Level 1, which is different in a number of ways, but still it's level-based. So we have GCSEs. Now, this is a standard qualification that everybody goes through, and it involves basic mathematics. And we have a good basis for moving on to study A-level with. And this whole curriculum is quite skill-based, quite memory-based. And you have a higher tier and a foundation tier to access at different levels. Typically, if you're doing higher tier, it's because you want to go on and study A-level. And the foundation is a good foundation in mathematics without the extra particularities of the more academic side of maths. And these will move on to a range at A-level. As we can see here, let me scroll down. Here. And so A-level comes in two halves. And this is just for you to plan ahead. So if you're at this stage here at GCSE, it's so that you can be looking ahead and thinking, okay, where do we want it to lead? There's a certain proportion of skills at GCSE that we don't need really past GCSE. They're good to know, but at A-level, we only take a particular slice. And I've talked about this in some of my videos, but those core ones are in the video, Are You Ready for A-Level Maths? And you might be surprised which skills carry on and which don't. Largely, it's algebra and number and some geometry. But there's also a lot that do not. If you study A-level maths, you will be looking at a 2-year study, and these 4 books on the left will be for you. So things like number, algebra, probability, they all turn into things like function analysis, and statistics and mechanics, rather than the original names, which are probably more rudimentary, and they become more broader disciplines. And you'll study through these books, as you can see here. The 2 blue ones at the top are pure. Just going to change my screen up because I can't keep looking down. That's better. So the 2 books at the top here, these are the pure mathematics, where they will talk through functional analysis and calculus and things like that. And the bottom we have a specialization in statistics and mechanics, which are they take up 2 years of study, but it depends. If you're going to do further maths, then they are going to take up a little bit less, because you're going to need to study all of these. And these are the full range of options available at A-level for further maths. These are really, if you're serious about getting into something with STEM or mathematics, the books that you're going to be using. Everybody takes the core one. So these are the 2 green books if you're studying further maths. And they're largely an extension of the things that you see in the blue books here, the standard A-level. Then you're going to need to pick from this. You either pick 2 of the same color, or one from the top row of 2 different types. So you could do FS1, FS2, because you can't do FM2 without doing the FM1, for example. It just wouldn't make sense. But you need to do both green and 2. And they will set you up for different things in the future, and give you slight advantages. But I wouldn't worry too much. I would at this stage stick with what you'd like the sound of, what you could get a good grading in some cases, because the specialization does help you later with undergraduate degree, but just not to a degree that you maybe think is life-changing. Like if you picked a different undergraduate degree, that's a bit more important, but the A-level, it just gives a slight advantage. So if you're really purist, you'll go for the FP1 and FP2, which really advance pure mathematics. But this is currently what's on offer, and in a little bit we'll talk about combinations that might set you up in different fields of work. But maths is a really good topic for the future, because it's the language of all the sciences. And as you can see, the world is moving towards the sciences, the robotics, and the AI. And all of the artificial intelligence is grounded in things like mathematics and computer science. There's not restricted to just that, of course. Things like mechanics will help with understanding the physics of the world. So physics are more to do with the robotics. Is still going to need physicists, what we might call applied mathematicians. But they still use the language of maths. So as an A-level, it's very strong for a number of things that would be future-proof if you're looking for a technical career, that is. Once you do your A-levels, let's say you get 3 or 4, or this would be considered a level 2 / level 3 qualification, depending on the year that you're studying, and you get qualified to study at a university for an undergraduate degree, which may last for 2 or 3 years, depending on where you go. If you study at Oxford and Cambridge, for example, you're going to get your master's degree along with your undergraduate, and that's very useful. But getting into that is a whole different thing. We're not here to talk about how to get into universities, but what the route might look like to open up for you. And then once you do your undergraduate degree, you may consider 2 options. One, which is your master's, which takes, I guess, like your final year and reframes it at a slightly higher level and makes it your own. So for 1 year, perhaps 2, depending on how fast you get through it, you're going to be doing a mini project, which is a bit like a dissertation, and your final project will be some sort of presentation or project into a particular topic that will help. You get onto a master's program, or perhaps it's a specialization for a job. But your master's is another year on top. We won't talk money at this stage, but it is a little bit more money, and master's is probably considered about the average level of qualification now in professional fields. So undergraduate, try not to think about that as where you've got to, but master's is the aim at a minimum. Now, if your undergraduate degree goes really well, say you get a first or a 2-1, you might be invited to bypass the master's degree and get onto the PhD instead. Now, PhD is a very significant undertaking. It's a number of years, perhaps 6, and you will have a hyper-specialization in a particular field. Some, like what we've mentioned earlier, it could be a particular type of mathematics that is leading to the development of a field in artificial intelligence. And it's something that you produce a very detailed investigation and research into a particular thing that doesn't exist yet. It's very different to what we've seen in these previous levels, because this stuff doesn't exist, and it leads us back to having resilience, right? You may find confidence in looking at the answer in the back of the book because it's comforting, but what happens if you are studying something where there's no answers yet? So you have to believe in yourself, and you have to follow methodologies that are rigorous and be held to account in the community. And so PhDs, they're a big undertaking, but they're really valuable. And you don't just learn the topic, you learn a lot of life skills of organization and high-level thinking. And you can go straight there from your undergraduate degree if you've done really well, or you may decide to have a go with a master's first, which will set you up really nicely for a PhD. As you can appreciate, this takes another year, but it's quite hard to go straight to a PhD. And that's pretty much the kind of level as the PhD is what we're talking about with an ethics officer, with the AI. You're probably going to be hyper specialized. All the very high level professionals that you see have PhDs. Some may have a master's, less likely for undergraduate degrees, and probably not at all with just A levels. So it's kind of an aim here, and it is a long-term aim. Okay, this is years. Your undergraduate degree might be 3 years. This might be a year, and this might be another 6. So it's the kind of thing that you're getting yourself in for. But as we know, with an ever-changing environment, what kind of jobs are there out there? If you're into STEM, you might be looking for a long journey. And lastly, we have networking, which what happens after you've got your PhD? Well, you do a postdoc, which is you do more research, but for a different field. You're not just producing your own. Or you could get straight into a job, work for a company, start your own company. But in general, you're going to be networking. So to develop further, you probably want to network with people to exchange ideas and think about what research could be done. And so I really feel like when this hits you, it can be a bit late. So this networking comes back down to collaborative working in the classroom, all the way back here at GCSE and A level. If you get used to how to talk to people, how to work together, as we mentioned earlier, this side of it gets a lot easier because you're exchanging ideas in a professional way and you know how to talk to people. So yeah, this is probably what comes afterwards in terms of development. Maybe people have multiple PhDs, but there you go. If anybody wants to know any more about any of these levels, I have a number of professionals that I am in contact with that I can get interviews and information from. So any comments with questions, let me know. And I just want a little look at further maths. As we promised earlier, what sort of options would you want to look at? Well, I produced a very small video on the options called Dear Me, which modules should I choose? It's like you might want to, you're a bit overwhelmed about what you can do. I would say mostly people end up doing whatever their school offers them, but you don't need to stop there. If you really want to do the module that you want, you can go change schools. That might not be an option for you, but it's possible. And the school will only provide to you what they can. If the teachers at the school can't teach it, they probably won't offer it. But then again, maybe they are very able to adapt and they just put a module in front of you that they were, I don't know, maybe they didn't put much thought into it. So if you suggest that you would like a particular set of modules, it might be possible to change to. Either way you get it to you, have a look at these and what it might do for you, because some people do get the option. A brief summary of that video shows you what options you have. So if you do decide to do further maths, which means you're probably going down the academic route towards PhD, you'll have a Core Pure 1 and a Core Pure 2, which are very exciting. Firstly, you're going to introduce mathematics like complex numbers, which are the first thing beyond a standard education, I think, that are quite exciting. And you're going to pick some of the options after it. So you can do further mechanics, further stats, decision, or Pure 1. And you can mix and match. So what do they look like? Core Pure 1 and Core Pure 2, they cover complex numbers, which is like a world beyond the real numbers. That's fascinating. Matrices, which allow us to transform systems, but also solve large systems. And when you have over and underdetermined systems, that's when we start to look at the world of regression and artificial intelligence systems. Differential equations, which model complex change in the world, and further calculus. So very exciting as a basis. But then after that, what do the others look like? Well, we have decision maths, which are things like algorithm, critical path analysis, network flow, game theory. As you can tell, it's very much to do with computers and real life applications to business. I think it's a fantastic module. And it's kind of the first time you're going to see a different type of maths that isn't in the standard. So all of this stuff like graph theory, it's not in standard maths. You don't need much of the background to start this, because there's not really that there. The statistics, as you can appreciate, is more of the statistics, but focused on what you might see at university. So hypothesis testing, and everything is pretty much hypothesis testing, and p-values, detailed calculations of what goes into creating the statistical methods that other disciplines, such as psychologists and other sciences, will use as like a facility, but they don't necessarily know what's under the bonnet. Whereas you will be looking at how the calculations work. And once you know how they work, you can have an opinion on whether they're valid or not, whether they should be in this mode of study, and how they can be adjusted if they're not quite working. And you'll look at many, many distributions, including chi-squared, which is what this symbol is up here. With further mechanics, you're going to look at advanced physics. I mean, in a lot of ways, it's just physics. If you're studying physics as well, you're going to do well with mechanics. But I find that you're not going to find a teacher that's comfortable doing high-level mechanics as much as the others, in my experience. But good luck. So you'll look at things like momentum, elastic collisions, Hooke's law, which is actually extremely important in engineering, if you're going to go and study engineering. Because guess what? In engineering at university level, you do have mathematics modules, and they will come back to things like matrices, etc., but still based on systems involving Hooke's law. You'll look at circular motion and oscillations, which are modeled by differential equations, which you still see at university level in engineering courses. And further Pure 1 and further Pure 2, it's essentially more of the pure core stuff, but it will include one of the noblest pursuits in math, which is going to be group theory and number theory. If you're going to do a degree in mathematics, you're going to see a lot of this, group theory, and number theory. And it's just going to support abstract thought, depending on which you want to go. So what sort of combinations can you have? I raced through them in the video, but essentially, after talking to a number of professionals and people who are highly, they're high level. They're in the university, lecturers, for example, and in business. What sort of skills would be beneficial, ultimately? We're not talking that your choices at A-level are going to be having big implications. We're saying that if you specialize in this particular choice of module at the degree level, what does it lead to? And statistics with pure sort of comes under a finance and engineering route, because you'd be very surprised how much pure maths is needed in engineering, as well as finance. So things like actuary science is essentially statistics, and it's hard to imagine, but at the very high level, models are probabilistic in terms of insurance. Even when we're looking at models for large financial portfolios, and this is cutting edge research, so it's still on the tip of my tongue, but large models for how we invest and keep portfolios are largely based on stochastic models, so very much in statistics. And the new quantum algorithms that are coming out, to understand them, you need statistics. It's very pioneering, but that's a good combination for those sort of fields. Combination number two, let's say you mechanics 1 and mechanics 2, the purist, still excellent for engineering. You can deal with the math, the pure maths later as it comes. And to be fair, there's still a fair amount of pure maths in core pure 1 and 2. So this sort of thing would lead to being some field of physics or engineering. Physics obviously is quite broad, but you need to have a good understanding of the physical world, including things like gravity and forces. Combination number 3, my favorite, further statistics 1, which 2 is also great, but you only get one choice, and decision maths. Why decision maths? Well, decision maths meets, I guess, the modern world with a lot of practical applicative maths. And these sort of careers would range from data scientist, which essentially is somebody who analyzes data and big data and uses statistics to do so, and comes up with great. But it's more than that. It's how to store data as well. So data comes in very many ranges and leads to artificial intelligence eventually. Computer scientists might like this because decision maths is very algorithmic. And as we know, the latest computer science involves a lot of statistics. Actuary science, which is, it was voted, so actuary science was voted the best work-life balance of any job out there. It pays a lot of money. So we're talking 200, well, it can be up to 500. If you look at the statistics, up to 500,000 a year, but a starting salary, which is well above average. And discrete maths, so if you're studying things that, it's essentially decision maths. And we could talk about algorithms for GPS locations. But discrete maths has become very high profile recently. And there's a Morse course, which is very good, that you could study. This is the kind of thing that would lead to it, because how we meet the real world with everything. So decision maths and stats and being agents of data. Combination number 4, stats and more stats, would lead to being a statistician. Probably all of the above that we've mentioned previously, but also biological sciences, data science again, social science, Morse. Pretty much any science you can think of is not going to be immune from statistics. And some are completely obsessed with statistics. It's the science of the future. it's what we lean on to try and keep ourselves in perspective about the calculations that we make. And much of the advanced physics, such as quantum physics, it's heavily dependent on knowledge of statistics. And lastly, further pure 1 and further pure 2. So if you're going to go down that pure route, this is pretty hard, but if you're good with numbers, no worries. We've got a maths degree waiting for you. Okay, so the kind of pure maths that you'll see at more traditional institutions would be ideal to have something like this for. Because you want that group theory, you want number theory, and it's a good setup. It depends on the institution you go for. Some have on their listings that they have 10 out of 10 employability. That's because they're very applied. They look at very much industry applications, and the more traditional places that you go to, maybe Cambridge or Durham, they're going to be kind of the theoretical side. Less on the employability scale, but more on the pure knowledge side. Finance and economics are definitely very good for this. Some of the greatest amounts of money have been made from mathematicians who get themselves into finance. And lastly, it's the most quantitative option. So generally anything that involves numbers. As I said, if you're a mathematician, it's a curse and a merit that you can turn your hand to so many things. But having the options is sometimes overwhelming. You can do so much that it's hard to even pick one. But if you're good at maths, it's pretty much a good skill for most careers. So yeah, those are what those combinations may help you with. But I said, please, big disclaimer, it's not necessarily important to pick a specialization at that level. But they're there just to give you an idea, because I know that a number of people approach me and ask about these combinations. What would be preparing people for the future? As I said, anything in maths is going to be good because they underpin the STEM. And this is, I guess, it's just like a overview of what they are, so it demystifies it a little bit. And I'm going to leave everything there and probably address one of the biggest concerns that I see when we're trying to study maths at a higher level. Most people look at everything, if you'll say GCSE right now, you'll look at everything I've just talked about, and it might look like very overwhelming. It might look very intimidating. But in fact, I want you to change the attitude. So your current attitude might be something like, oh, I can never do that because it looks so complicated. But the attitude to have is going to be, wow, it's going to be amazing when I can do that. And it's just life-changing to say, like, have a can-do attitude, to say, I can't do that yet, right? And that really is what it's all about. People come into my courses and maybe they don't have much confidence, and I will get them the grade. And they're surprised, as they can get what they have, and they look back and they think, wow, how far they've come. It's like walking up a mountain, and it doesn't take long. As long as you keep taking those steps, it doesn't take long before you can look back and think and see something really amazing and see that you've taken a lot of progress. But you can appreciate that if you feel intimidated and you don't even try, that no progress would be made at all. So really get used to that steady daily progress and don't give up. And just think about how good it's going to feel to understand everything that you've just seen. Right, we're going to leave it there because this has been a long live stream, an important one, I think, for orienting at least my own thoughts for the future, and why are we educating? What is it going to look like? And what kind of skills do we want to be capitalizing upon according to the industry leaders and the business owners right now? And so hopefully that's been useful. But I'll see you again in the questions and in the comments. If you have any, just let me know.